More, my friend. That was an impromptu song put together by Brother Santicaro and Boy and I a couple of weeks ago. But doesn't, if you listen to the lyrics, doesn't it sound a lot like the supreme and unsurpassable Mahamudra of liberation? It reminds us that any minute we could die. And it gives us a sense of urgency then, to seek our liberation. And then it inspires us that we can do, because there are forces to assist. And then it says, so let there be love for you and compassion. It says, come in where it's warm, my friend. And then when one is in this state of mind, then one can begin to spontaneously create within their own mind and their own heart the relief that others need. So we don't have to be trying to say like, may I love my friends, may I love my neighbors, may they be happy. You don't have to like that. That's kind of like the idea, but we've made it the thing that we do. But it's just to get the idea and allow that to wash over you. See what spontaneously arises in your heart, and you find that the more that you release yourself from all of the grasping and the craving, the more you begin to release others and free others. The more you have compassion for yourself, the more you're able to have compassion for others. But it must be a naturally arising thing in the heart, not something that's forced by the head. So I wanted to talk this morning about the second step of the Eightfold Path. And what's the first one? No? Right view? Okay. So it talks about having to have a right view to have a, what's the second one? hmm So it's like right intention. No. So intention is everything. You know, sometimes you could do the right thing, but you uh, maybe did it at the wrong time and didn't come out that well. You know, but if you know that you did the right thing, even if it didn't come out at the right time, then you know that it's half of the view, half of the perspective. So oneself doesn't have to be so hard on oneself if it didn't turn out right because it was the right thing, but it was at the wrong time. You know, but if one wasn't sure that they did the right thing, you know, then that's when one has to really check inside. So a lot of times we're blaming ourselves and we're flagellating ourselves when, and it's the wrong time to do it. The wrong time to do it is usually the time that we feel like we should do it. The right time to do it is when we think we're right and don't need to do it. And so this is a kind of checking up on oneself continually is what is required. The taking refuge uh, is not so much the kind of thinking that we toss everything on them and they pick it up and they carry it for us. We don't take refuge in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha in that way, but we take refuge in the power of what they're talking about to allow us to transform ourselves. And you can't transform me, I can't transform you, but we each can transform ourselves. So in a way, to study Buddhism is to study oneself. It's coming back to finally come to know one's intrinsic nature that's been, you know, so covered over and obscured for all of these eons. And so it's like an unpacking. So when we use the second one, step of the Noble Eightfold Path, being the right intention, you know, or you could say like the right I don't want to say reason, but I'll say the right motive for doing something. And when we use that word right, we don't mean it in the sense of this is right and this is wrong, although that's certainly in conventional reality a truth. But what we mean is more like correct. Now, some don't like correct. I like correct. Our Buddha masters from China, and they really talk about being correct. It's hard for Westerners to hear we like something that speaks a little more kindly to us. But I like it like I'm hardcore, so give it to me hard, and I can understand it. So that's why the academy is called Correct Cultivation. I'm like, get with it. Correct Cultivation Learning from Buddha Academy. But you know, you have to be able to go beyond those feelings that we have to be able to get to that. Once you go beyond those feelings to like, I want it, you know, I mean, if you're gonna, like we used to have a saying, if you're gonna go to hell, just go all the way bad. You know, don't be lukewarm bad if you're gonna end up in hell. Anyway, go all out. And so it's kind of like that with the Dharma, you know, like if you're gonna put forth the effort, you know, to try to walk this path of awakening, then go all out. And so it's when Buddha Master uses the term correct so that we understand and won't feel so tense around correct. It's speaking of correct in the sense of what is favorable to awakening, what's favorable to me waking up, you know. And if we judge every thought, every speech, every action around just that idea. If we could like that could just become a mantra. I know we like to chant other ones, you know, oh Mani Padme Hum and all that. But suppose we just said, chanted the mantra, is this favorable to awakening? It would be very useful for us. And so uh, we find our practice becomes a testing our motivations, and that's what actually leads to the motivation. Of course, you have to know the truth so that you can form a view, and then you test your motivations against that view. So before you can even have a right intention, you have to decide what you believe is true, right? And so we talk a lot of Buddhist stuff, but like actually, we don't really believe, we don't hold it as true. It's not the uh, lens through which we walk out our life. We have our Buddhist practice, and then we have our real life where we have to handle things. And our ideas around how we handle things are proceed out of either our ordinary mind or out of a Buddhic view. It's those two choices, you know. And you could just be honest with yourself, you know, like sometimes we're not really honest with ourselves simply because we um, care about what others think. And so we have a persona, we have a face, you know, we can even hold a view, but it's not a sincere heart life transforming holding. It's a casual one. And in this casualness, we don't end up with accomplishment. We just end up knowing something. So there's a difference between knowing something and accomplishing what is known. We talk about practice all the time. We should stop talking about practice and we should start talking about accomplishment. You know, it's like going out and going to rehearsing every week and never singing, you know, before an audience. It's like it's we need to move on to accomplishment. So I guess my question for you is how, when we have like this fog around what we actually hold to be true, and how is it possible to walk it out, and how is it possible to lift that fog? And it starts by studying our intention. So, what do you think is a way that we can start a practice that leads to watching our intentions and asking ourselves what questions would we ask ourselves right in the moment if we're practicing watching our intentions? That's good. Give me another one. Okay, good. Give me another one. Somebody else. Why am I? Yeah. Why am I doing this? Is this in service to God? Okay. Keep them coming. Okay. Mm-hmm. Anymore? They should be like falling out like water. Mm-hmm. Keep going. Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. 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 Mm-hmm. Okay. So in our practice, we're sort of like practicing to become awakened or to become Buddha, right? I didn't hear one question around that. I was just listening to where thoughts, what kind of thoughts are arising in the mind. But one good one should be, if we call ourselves Buddhists, is, you know, is this the action of a Buddha? Is this the thought of a Buddha? Is this the mind of a Buddha? Is this my true thought? Is this my, you know, in Mahayana practice, they consider the Dharma not the study of Buddhism, but the practice of acting, thinking, speaking like a Buddha would speak. The more we do that, you can call it imitation, but imitation does bring about assimilation. And so the more I ask myself that question, you know, the closer I get to coming towards my truest nature. But if I never ask myself that question, I never start moving towards it. You understand what I mean? I mean, the words sound good, but what am I trying to do here? I'm trying to awaken. I'm trying to become a Buddha. And so our eye needs to be on what is that perfect response? And am I doing that right now? If I ask myself that, without judgment, I'm not even asking myself to try to do it right now, am I? I'm simply asking, am I doing it right now? So the first step is just to observe, just to watch. And, you know, ask yourself the question. You don't have to struggle to try to make it. If you ask yourself the question enough and your answer is no, but I would like to be walking, thinking, acting in the mind, with the mind of a Buddha. Then you start inclining towards what is the mind of a Buddha. And one starts to see oneself, even as you make a little bit of progress, to know this is possible, even for me. Maybe in this very life, who knows? Because the Buddha said that the way that the mind inclines is the way that we go. So see, when you ask yourself questions internally, which way is your mind inclining? Is it inclining towards a negative, I'm so unworthy, I messed up again, you know, or is it leaning towards how I think a Buddha should think in this moment? And you'll start to see a difference in your life. The first thing you'll see if you ask this question is that there's a sense of self-preservation that arises first. That's self-centeredness is just like, it's just self-preservation. That's what the mind tells us. It's just self-preservation. That's first law of nature, right? Mm-hmm. And so we'll see how we just immediately gravitate towards self-preservation. That's why we have practices of contemplation. Self and others are equal. If I never bring that thought to my mind, I never contemplate it or only sparingly contemplate self and others are equal, I'll always feel like self, you know, is superior to others. But in a time when I'm sitting here training the mind, I'm thinking self and others are equal. You know, how will I talk about that? I'm no more worthy than someone else. I'm no less worthy than someone else. And if we just stay with that for a while until we come to the conclusion, self and others are equal. Then we get up and we start going about our day. And every time I have a preference or somebody says something, it's a practice I'm doing right now at the Hermitage, because I have a way of caring for Panyadeepa, and Kay, his Kapia, has a way of caring for him, and sometimes those collide. You know, a lot of times those collide. You know, and I have to keep saying self and others are equal. And what that does is it makes me sometimes, I won't say insist, but move forward with the way I'm going to handle something. But at other times, or maybe the very next time, I'll acquiesce. And even though I would want to um, do something different in his care, I'll just let her do what she wants to do. These are how you take the practices and really use them. Self and others are equal. If I really saw her as equal to me, then her opinion would be as equally valuable as mine. And so it's lessening my opinion and being willing, you know, not to compromise, but being willing to accept and to know, to come into the realization, you know, her opinion is just as valid as mine. And her sense of care runs just as deep as mine. So this is how we have to use it, not where we're doing okay, but we take the Dharma to the rough places, where we're going through the rough spots, where we're struggling with something. The Dharma comes like a friend, like a strong man, to lift up our arms, to help us in that kind of way. You know, so when we talk about we're not alone, you don't even have to look for a being to not belong. The Buddha said the Dharma can be your teacher. You know, let the Dharma be your teacher. So it comes along as a strong man and lifts you out at a time when you're weak, if you look to it in that kind of way. So I'm never lonely. Well, I'm never alone because Dharma is in me. And it rises up at the time that we need it, and one can incline in that way. And if you don't do it fast enough, the fact that you recognize you didn't do it fast enough is still progress. Yeah, yeah. So if we work in this kind of way, we'll come to a place that we stop thinking that anything that makes us suffer is other dependent. It's like the other person, or that it's anything out there. We'll start to discover that all of our discomfort comes from what's arising in our own mind. First of all, that's encouraging to me because I don't even want to think that you have the capacity to control, you know, to control my destiny, to control how I think, to control how I feel. You know, that'd be pretty bad if I thought you had the power to affect me in this way. So I like the idea that I can take responsibility for how I think. I like that I can take responsibility for how I feel and for how I act or how I respond. In the church, we also always say the devil made me do it, you know. But in Buddhism, we say you made me do it. We're always pointing to the other, right? But what if we could like fully take that back on? How empowering it is to know, like I'm the captain of my ship. I I am the one who determines what happens here. You know? Not in a proud way, not in a bodacious kind of way, but just in a very confident way. Like, oh, I didn't feel that much in control when such and such and such happened. You know. But if one sits and reflects upon it, one knows that one has an inner strength. Could have been in control if we were willing, but mostly we fail to meet our goal, our mark, because we're just not willing. You know? And we talk about like, you know, being weak, and our therapist tells us that we have to be patient and loving and kind with ourselves and excuse ourselves, and we get into the excuse-itis and we forget. But the Dharma puts us back in the driver's seat and lets us know what our capacity is to do all manner of good and to stop doing all manner of evil. To move from a self-centered view or perspective of life to self and others are equal. And it encourages us not to like try to rush off and try to do it, But you just sit there and ponder that until you're firmly convinced. And then just watch what happens. Your mind just starts to incline in a certain way. Now it's no force. It's your benevolence that accommodates another person, right? And that's an entirely different thing. And then after that, we can take it a little further, not to just self and others are equal, but that we can make others more important than self. You say, well, hold on, you got going too far now. You have to take care of yourself to take care of others. But don't worry, we have enough self-centeredness. It takes a lot to dig that out and bring it back to the middle. So we can go further than the middle because we're over here. So we can take it over here to self, is greater than others. Self is more important. And that might bring us to the middle. So go ahead. You can freely think that. And after a while, you will start spontaneously considering others before yourself. And it doesn't mean that you don't consider others. It doesn't mean that you don't consider yourself. It means that when you and others have become equal, then when you consider others, you're automatically what? Yeah, you're included in that. You don't worry about, well, what about me? Because that's all wrapped up in there. And we start doing what's best for everybody. That's not, again, I say, that's not compromise. It takes skill to be able to do that. And skill takes intention. And intention takes right view. So this path, we call it the Noble Eightfold Path, Arya Magga. But it means Arya, to embody, Magga, the path. To embody the path. Not to know it, not to talk about it, but to actually walk it out. So we think, especially in the West, that this is like 90% meditation. That's why our retreats, everything's all built around hours and hours of meditation. And that's not a bad thing. It's better than no thing. But when the Buddha assembled his disciples, he assembled them for teaching. And then he said, now each one of you go off to your, to your single room, to the root of a tree, to your hut, and reflect on this. He brought them together for a time of crafting, helping to craft a right view. What is a right view? One that starts with an F. FTA. Favorable to awakening. Favorable. So we can be doing something, and that's a mouthful right there. We might be doing something, FTA, yeah, FTA. My husband and I, we used to have a word. Remember the story of Rumpelstiltskin? Is that it, Rumpelstiltskin? Yeah. And so we came up with that for our trigger word. Like if we were having a discussion and something's going in a wrong way and we're around other people, we would whisper that word. And yeah, and I mean, it helped. It was useful, and it was like slow your roll right now because you stepping into dangerous territory, and this is not going to be pretty. And um, but you can make it like that. FTAs like that, for yourself. Nobody even know what you're thinking now. We find these little hacks, and they really, really work, and so, ah, yeah, when the minute a thought arises around something, we speculating around something, or we don't like what we see, or we don't like what we just heard, and the mind goes somewhere, you can just say FTA because you know which way it's going. I mean, we know when we're thinking our best about a situation or someone, and when we're thinking our worst, right? We actually know. It wasn't like, oh, that just came up on me so fast. I just don't know where it came because we felt it coming. It's like they say, like to this is terrible to talk about in a Buddhist assembly, but like a frog in a pot that you have the flame down real low, and the frog actually cooks because he doesn't realize that he's cooking, and so we like to think that's how our responses come, you know and of course they do come in a flash. They come like this, but they tell us our mind is a gazillion times faster than the last most updated computer that we've made. So that lets you know how fast thoughts can come up. And so by the time we snap and say that came up so fast, I couldn't help myself. If you think about it, you felt it rising, you felt it rising, you felt it rising. But we're not in the habit of raising up a standard against it in that moment. FTA. This is favorable to awakening. Yeah. Um. Wow. Oh, I know what I want to say. We think we come to learn something, and then we go back and we try to, um, I'll say, imitate what we learn because we're after understanding, but understanding is not learned. You don't learn understanding, do you? Hmm? Anybody else? Stay with my question. That's what I was looking for. Yeah. Understanding is realized, it's not learned. So we can learn and learn and learn and learn and learn and learn. Now, realization comes up from inside. So we have to drop from the head down into the heart for the embodiment of something. And then when we see the benefit of it, we truly see it, we understand. You know. So we're trying to understand things from a rational perspective, but this is definitely not rational. We can use it to be appear, to become, to walk more rationally in the world, but it's not rational. And so, during the age of enlightenment, um, a lot of our wording and meanings got changed around. And as they changed, we flipped in our understanding, and suddenly intuition became a bad thing, you know, and rationalization became a good thing. But we rationalize whatever we hold to be true. So actually, rationalization comes after we have decided, you know, what is our banner or our standard for truth. It's our justification for what makes sense for us, is what I'm saying. And the Buddha says that if that already works for you, no need for this. This is just for those who all the rest of that doesn't work for. And so that means that when we come in, we have to come in with a openness, ready to hear something that we don't already know, or that we don't already think, or that we don't already believe, we don't already embrace, we don't already do, or we don't do it to our satisfaction, and we're looking, for some strengthening to up our game. So it's useless and it's fruitful to but the Dharma and argue continually with it instead of trying to understand that point of view and then allow it to mix with your point of view. And then you can choose which one you'll swallow and which one you'll spit out. Yeah. This is how we take in the Dharma, how we come to directly experience the Dharma. We take it in and we do an experiment with it and see what our experience is. And when it becomes our experience, then we really know something. To study the Dharma is to study ourselves. And if it is propelled by right view, to know ourselves is to forget ourselves. We forget ourselves when we concentrate on others. And to forget oneself then opens up the way that we can know the 10,000 things. All we have to do this week is to do this little practice of what is it? ATF. ATF? What does it mean? That's wrong. Because it's not ATF. Right? It's FTA. Favorable to awakening. Let's see. Favorable to awakening. One time the Buddha Master said, now, if you have to have the right karma to be able to be my disciple. So you don't have to talk about what a great boon it is to be here today. Your karma earned you a seat in this audience today. He said, so when people think, oh, thank you, we're so grateful. He said, no, no need to thank me, because this is you, your karma. You have put yourself here. So otherwise, be no way possible for you to be in my presence. And he wasn't like bragging. He was like just telling you, like, how does it wouldn't be possible for you to have the good fortune to be sitting here unless you had earned that call. And then he said, so whatever you get out of being in my presence today, also you've earned the karma for that. He said, and if you didn't get anything out of it, he said, it'll come around maybe in a few thousand more eons. So try to get it today. But he also said this. He said, you can study 10 years, you can study 20 years, you can study 30 years. He said, but when the teacher comes and he gives you the truth, he said, it's like shorthand. It's like a hack. You know, and you can just take that and you can just work with that. You can just bypass all the mental conversation, all the mental chatter that goes on. Then make it simple. Simplify. We like things to be complicated because that just shows how intelligent we are. But he said simplify. And if we simplify, we will enter into something because we'll bypass all of this mind talk and we'll just start automatically doing. You know, they say the children, they don't learn so much by what the parents say, but they just watching what they do. They watch and they do what they do. And that's an easier way than having all of the reasons why and all that. Just watch and do what they do. They said, just consider the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, the heavenly beings, and do what they do. Someone needs assistance, you just go to their aid. I heard something about a dear sister yesterday, a friend. Well, I was a friend to her. She wasn't a friend to me, but I'm still a friend to her. And I heard about some misfortune in her life. And the person who was telling me was, they called themselves being a friend to me. So they were on my side of the situation of what happened between me and her. And because they were on my side, they, like me, you know, they were disparaging her and saying, you see what happened to her, see, like God don't like ugly, one of those kind of things, you know. But when I heard it, I was like deeply grieved, you know, because I'm me. I have a standard for myself, you know, and I hurt for her for the situation that she's in, and I thought about her as if she was me, you know, because you know, even if I do something wrong, even if I, you know, make a mistake, even if I did it deliberately, you know, because I was just filled with anger or jealousy or envy or whatever, even when if I do something wrong, I want people to have mercy on me. I want people to think about that one thing doesn't define who I am. I'm not 100% wrong. If I am, you better really run for the hills. I just, you know, that's not all of who I am. Maybe that thing, yeah, but that's not all of me. Maybe I lost my head, literally lost my mind, you know, and acted in a way that I deeply regret. I would still I want to say to be forgiven, but I'm trying to move past the need for anybody to forgive. You know, we only forgive. We need forgiveness when we don't have the capacity to not judge people and not think of them like we would want to be thought of. That's when we need forgiveness. But when we're no longer doing that, forgiveness doesn't even come to the equation. You know, you don't even have to think about forgiving somebody. Actually, forgiving somebody is still holding them in judgment. And we're just so pious and just so good. You know, like we'll just usher a little bit of forgiveness on them. But thinking self and others are equal takes judgment and forgiveness both out of the equation. Just little by little, it starts rubbing off the edges. And then it just becomes action, you know, the right action in the right moment. the right thought for someone in the right moment. And then nobody's thinking that they're doing anything. And unless we think we're doing something, the more we just become egoless, we start returning to our true nature. And a kind of joy comes with this life. It really starts to be stressless. You really almost have to like grab yourself to make yourself do things, because you're like, what they say, come with me. And even when you're having a hard day, just another day in samsara, right? It doesn't have to determine, you know, your contentment for today at all. Just another day in samsara. When one's not attached to this that is arising in the course of the day, you could just let it arise, be there for a while, and pass off. So if we learn not to so quickly take action, you know, then we'll start to see how quickly something moves. It's just like clouds in the sky, and they're just moving. So instead of jumping on something, just wait a minute, because after a while it'll be gone. You won't have to even take any action. And then life starts to get really, really good. It gets so good that when the bad stuff comes, you can just say, bring it on. Because you know that inwardly you can handle it, you can hold it. And it's in this way we get free of the nature of samsara, which is praise and blame, loss and gain, pleasure and pain, fame and shame. That's what we're tied up by. That's what brings all of our suffering. That's what brings all of our feelings around the events that happen in the course of the day. That's what governs how we move in life and have our being, unless we hitch our star to something higher than that. So this Dharma takes us out of the ordinary way of viewing the world. It takes us out of our ordinariness. And we enter into a higher vibration or a higher realm. We get a bird's eye view. We're perched up higher above the circumstances of life, and we can look out over. You know, it's like being in the middle of the forest, and you look out like, you can't really see the forest for the trees. But if you're perched on the apex, on a plateau or a mountain above, looking down, now you can see the whole forest. And that's how our view changes. It depends on what seat we sit in. It depends on where we choose to stand to look. And we can do it on the level of our ordinary thinking or a what would Buddha do? And he says that we have this same capacity. That is actually our intrinsic nature. But we have to start taking off the layers, layer after layer after layer. We have to start taking off the layers of self, of feeling, of form, of perception. starts with right. What?
Yeah. Right. Intention.
And I like we say right view, and some places it's translated as right understanding. And I actually like right understanding. Well, I like right understanding for y'all. I like right view for me, because I could take it a little tougher. Understanding sounds more, and actually it is more true to really understand right realizing, right realizing, like to see something in, it dawns on you that this is true, not because you said it, but it has dawned on me. Now I can see clearly, I can see it from the inside out. So it's a right understanding born of experience, right? Where right view sort of kind of stays in the mind, but I'm okay with that because it's my mind that needs to be renewed. I mean, my heart is okay, but my mind doesn't, measure up to my heart. So the good I would do, I don't always do. And sometimes what I don't want to do, I do. So I don't have a heart problem, but I need a mind renewal. But somebody in here might, it might be the reverse for you. Maybe you get it in your head, but you just can't open your heart. Here we are. Stone cold, hard-hearted. Even when you want to acquiesce, even when you want to take down, heart so hard you can't do it. And that's why there's so many ways of talking about the same thing. Because people are approaching, the heart of the matter but from a 360-degree circumference, from different places, different points of view, different understandings, different things going on in their life right now. And you say, you don't understand, say, yes, I do. No, you don't. The minute we say, I understand what you're going through, means, but I want to tell you something. And so after a while, we even stop saying that, We're just saying how tightly we are wound up around ourselves, our own view, our own identity, around our me, and our thinking. I think I know, I want. We don't even have to say I. It's understood. You know how there's a way of writing a sentence where I don't know because I'm not an English major, but we learned how you didn't have to say the speaker, the I part is understood. And that's how we are for us. It's like it's just understood. But the holy beings, constant thought is on the liberation of those who are bound in samsara. And when your mind becomes like that, because that's the only thing that puts them into a position, is their own aspiration, great wish, clarity. And actually the thoughts that proceed from them. The only thing that puts them in. So if you don't have those thoughts, then you can't sit in that seat. So as we develop ourselves, we don't have to take a test to see if we pass, get graded in our Buddhist nature by taking tests and taking exams. It's a place where you're behavior, your conduct, not what you say, but your conduct speaks to where you are. Conduct qualifies you to abide in certain spaces of clarity and awareness and peace. Your three commas: what you think, what you say, what you do. Create your reality. That's why two people can be going through the same thing and hold it two entirely different ways. So I'd like to leave you today with just this thought. This is favorable to awakening. This is take me further on my goal. If it does, keep going. If it doesn't, just stop. Just stop right there. I remember I tell it all the time because some new people in here today and they haven't heard it, so I'll tell it one more time. But I used to, when I was working a job, I would, you know how you gather at the water fountain. That's how you have your little breaks. You get around the water fountain and it's always somebody, you know, talking about something because that's what ordinary minds do. And so, so if you saw people starting to gather at the water fountain, like, you know, you go to the water fountain because the one who's going to get talked about is who? The one not at the water fountain, yeah. And so, so one day I was at the water fountain and the conversation came up around somebody who wasn't there, and I was in agreement with the conversation in general, and then somebody brought up something a little sneaky that she did, and then I started thinking, yeah, and she did something sneaky stuff on me too, you know, and so suddenly my conversation, the words were still there, but they were a little tricky because some dissatisfaction was arising from my memory of something that she had done to me, even though like she's still my homegirl. You know, I was still okay with her, but I thought about that thing, and so that little bit of animosity started creeping into the conversation. And right there, I was doing a particular kind of practice, which is sort of like this watching, not trying to change my behavior or, you know, force myself to think differently in a moment, but just watching what's coming up in the moment. And I realized, and I stopped. I just stopped and I said, okay, so now I'm gossiping, so I'm going back to my desk. And that's what I did. And that's how I broke myself of the habit of not stopping in the moment and reflecting later. You know, we like, don't stop in the moment. We just think about it later. But this is what helps you to stop it in the moment. I just said, okay, I'm gossiping. And I went on back to my desk. And it like broke it. Because now you know what happened. I'm never at the water fountain, so what does that mean? Yeah, they be talking about me all the time. Like, what's my issue? You know, I knew she couldn't be trusted anyway. You know, it's like all that thing, but it didn't matter to me at all because I had a goal in mind for myself, you see. That's how you get stronger and stronger, even though you may be walking against the wind, you know, in the way that the world thinks. You will be firm in your conviction. You'll be sure in your path. You'll be joyful in it because you know that you're doing the thing that within your heart of hearts you feel is right. And it is extremely powerful. And that's the way that we walk towards accomplishment. So we don't have to learn so much. You know, just perfect what we do know. So this week, every time you're doing something, you know, just check yourself. And then if you find that you go batting 97 to 3 on doing good, don't get too proud because pride comes before a fall. Right. So don't get too proud. Just notice that the Dharma in me is working, you know, because sometimes we don't see it working. You know, when we let one thing become so big, we don't see the Dharma working. We have to look to see where it's working. We have to look to see where it's working in our life. When we know that it's working, then we can handle the few curveballs that we get. And we can handle it when we actually miss a ball. I remember, but try to catch them. I remember I used to be a back catcher in a baseball league. I was good. I was really, really good. I mean, it was like no brag. It was just a fact. I was really good. And I could stand so close, like you see this ball coming at you, and you standing here, and you got to catch it if he doesn't hit it with the bat, right? So the back catcher likes to be backloaded, but I wanted to be right there, like as soon as that bat swung, like I'm like almost seeing exactly what the batter is seeing, right? But one day I missed that ball, and it cracked my eye open. And I'll tell you, after that, when I came back, to the league, I was like ball shy. I mean, finally I had to like quit. They kept trying to encourage me, because I was so good. But I came back and I was afraid of that ball, you know. And finally one day somebody said, but they were encouraging me, and I kept trying, you know. And they said, she'll get it back, she'll get it back. And then one day we were having a game, and I heard somebody on the other team said, go ahead, throw it any kind of way. She ain't gonna catch it. But the thing is, it was true. It was true. I was afraid of the ball. And that's the day I resigned. I was excellent. I was no longer. Um, and so they tried to say, well, it's like it affected my vision. But it was just, I was afraid of the ball. So that's something to know about yourself, something to acknowledge. You see what I'm saying? I mean, I was afraid of the ball. That's all. So if there's something happening and you call it like it is, that's the only way you get used to being honest about what it is. And then you can do something about it once you're honest with what it is. And you can decide what you want to do. There's no right you absolutely have to do this. You can decide. Like I could have tried to do something about overcoming the fear of the fastball. But about him was like just baseball. Why? Been there, done that, been excellent, no longer. On to the next thing. But I could have. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying there's no one way that you have to go. And sometimes we're afraid because we think that one way is required. And we're afraid of that way. But you have to find out what scares you. And you have to find your own way of escape through one of the 80, how many thousand? 84,000 Dharma gates. 84,001 and Dharma gates. You got plenty to choose from. Yeah, find your own. So I hope everybody heard a different Dharma talk today. And they're going to find one of those 84,001 Dharma gates. Find the one for you to overcome one thing this week, one hurdle. Look and see that one thing cropping up again and again and again in your life. You slay it one time, you slay all the time. Yeah? Thank you for coming today. May you be well and happy and peaceful. May no harm come to you and no danger. May you always be able to meet the inevitable difficulties of life. Thank you. Anybody want to say anything? Please go ahead.